Today, we're here to talk a little bit about transportation and the industry, state of the industry in North Carolina. And as I mentioned before, it's just really interesting to be able to talk about this with a whole nother set of topics with the same industry as we do each year. And it just shows you how important it is to this state, to this country, to this world. And I think people are really noticing it now more than ever and stuff like that. So once again, thank you so much for participating. Mike, if we could start with you, what I'd like to ask everybody just going around our group here is kind of a state of transportation and logistics from North Carolina's viewpoint. And because of your position as chair of the NCDOT, but also congratulations as your new position from an economic development perspective as a president of Piedmont Triad Partnership. If you could just talk to us a little bit, kind of the overview of transportation over the past year since we last spoke.
Well, thank you, Ben, for those kind words and also for including me. It is an exciting time to be in transportation, and we're certainly in a dramatically different place than we were a year ago on a lot of different fronts. From the NCDOT perspective, we've obviously been through 2 years of COVID, and so we took an initial hit to our revenue when folks, when everyone stayed at home for 3 months. Obviously that meant our gas tax revenue was not being collected, and that ended up being about $350 million, which was obviously significant and contributing to some of the cash issues we had at that time. The good news is that I think we as a society have adjusted to COVID, whatever that is, at the time. It changes in that, if there's a surge going on, then we take appropriate reactions. But in general, we found that the traffic has come back to 95% or so of what it was, and it's changed a little bit in that there's there's a lot more flexibility now in terms of folks working from home. So the traditional rush hour is not always as heavy as it used to be, although there are days that it is. But folks, are still driving. They're just maybe driving at different times. So from that aspect, it's been back to normal for us as far as revenue is concerned, and our overall financial health is really strong right now. As a matter of fact, we'd like to be able to spend a little more money than we are right now, but as I'm sure you'll hear from some of our other panelists, there's an issue in the market in terms of the capacity of the market to really get in there and do more projects because of workforce issues, raw materials, those types of things. So we're, working with our partners, our contractors, to make sure that we keep them at an appropriate capacity, that we don't create a situation for them that is unrealistic in terms of trying to put too much pressure on them to do jobs that they just don't have the workforce or the raw materials to do. So that's a thing that we're trying to challenge, balance that's challenging right now, and we meet regularly with our industry partners to do that. And so on the last front, we continue even through COVID to have really good economic development news in the entire state of North Carolina. Every year, it seems like we break the record of the year before in terms of investment and job announcements. And of course, as anyone listening, anyone who cares enough about this topic to listen to this panel knows that's not something that just happens overnight. That's something that is decades in the planning and takes a lot of hard work, and a lot of folks working on infrastructure, 20 years ago, should be taking a bow now, because that's what's resulting in us having some of these wins. And, we had obviously we've had in the Triad here, we've had two really signature wins in the past few months. We had the Toyota announcement at the Greensboro Randolph mega site. We also had Boom Supersonic at PTI, Mr. Baker's operation over there. But we've also, in the Triad also had another, we've had things going on like, Volvo has been working on their autonomous vehicle technology, their truck platooning. We've got AeroX over in Winston-Salem working on the drone technology. So really in the Triad, I think we have seen a position of transportation technology really coming to the forefront. And, I would say in terms of the impact of infrastructure, on economic development, I can't do any better than quote, the senior person from Toyota when they came to Randolph County to make the announcement. They gave 7 reasons why they chose this site. The first one was an extensive and well-maintained highway system for logistics. The second one was 4 international airports and 2 seaports. The third one was on-site rail. So the top 3 that they mentioned are transportation related. Then they go on to, obviously some other great, attributes that North Carolina has: an outstanding diverse workforce, available renewable energy, world-renowned education system, and strong government partnership at both the state and local levels. I mean, that's a nice capsule of why I think North Carolina is being successful right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you put that on a couple T-shirts and get them around there when they broke ground on it. That'd be outstanding. Hey, Sepi, if I may ask, you also kind of wear 2 hats as well a little bit. So one, the company you run, obviously a lot of the engineering services that they provide are directly involved in transportation, infrastructure, almost everything. But in addition to that, as I believe, you're also president of the North Carolina Chamber. And so you represent many businesses across the state, and obviously all have some sort of an interest in infrastructure and transportation, logistics. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing, what you're hearing from the folks at the members of the Chamber? But in addition, you got your hands in the dirt, so to speak, from that standpoint with your folks. So what are you hearing from those people?
So thank you so much for having me, Ben. It's a great question. So I am currently the chair of the board for the North Carolina Chamber. And the North Carolina Chamber, as you see on the tagline, it always says Chamber, a force in business, a force for business. So I would tell you that probably one of our most important focus points currently is transportation funding at the North Carolina Chamber. And as you mentioned, I do wear 2 hats as a practicing engineer, transportation engineer myself, and a founder of a firm that does quite a bit of work in the transportation field. It does impact our business currently. It does impact our workforce. So I'm going to answer it from both sides. From the transportation side of the North Carolina Chamber, we created a coalition called Transportation Destination 2030. And the focus of this group is to come up with a meaningful long-term way to modernize our transportation revenue. A great deal of our, as all the panelists know already, and I'm sure you're aware, great deal of our revenue comes from the motor vehicle gas tax. And that has been impacted, of course, because of COVID. And in addition, the incoming of electronic vehicles, that's going to become impacted further. And also the state is growing, so the need is growing. So when you look at the funding source that we have been relying on up to now, we could really connect the dots easily and figure out that this is not going to be sustainable for the future of North Carolina. So with the North Carolina Chamber, the coalition that has many industry folks in it, as well as we have, mayors and people who are passionate about the funding for transportation. We're focusing on having a very good dialogue with the legislators, looking at other states, looking at creative and innovative ways to come up with funding for transportation system. And we wonder why it's so important. So I'm going, and I don't need to probably go on to too much detail about why, but it's apparent why transportation is important, because first of all, it is the livelihood of our citizens. When you want your child to get on a school bus and safely go to school, you need safe bridges, you need safe roads, you need safe infrastructure. So safety is really big. Economic development is really important. As you know, there is no growth without a good, solid transportation system. And in this time in our state's history, we are growing so much. There's so many opportunities. There's such an exciting future for us. So it's really our responsibility to make sure that we have a very robust transportation system that goes from, east to west. And that doesn't only include highways, ports, and aviation, the whole system. So there's funding for that. Economic development is very, very key. So for many reasons, we need to fund that. We need to make sure we come up with a good transportation funding. And from the industry perspective, as Michael was alluding to, there was some funding issue impacted our industry greatly 2 years ago. We're excited to see a healthy financial situation currently for North Carolina DOT, which makes us in the industry much more excited and happy about how do we plan our businesses, how do we plan for recruitment, hiring, and delivering the project. So we like to see more projects coming on board. We like to see more work. We still have the capacity to do the design. I know the supply chain is going to be impacted down the road, and it is currently with construction. But from our design perspective, our industry does have the capacity to do the design, the pre-construction, and the construction administration.
Thank you so much. And I must apologize. I'm sorry. I said president of the chamber, and then my phone's buzzing right now. It's Gary Salamito. He's going, hey, what happened to me? Right? No. Apologize about that.
Absolutely.
Hey, so, Joe, tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing, and I think you've been working at the Regional Transportation Alliance for quite a while. Almost, I think, coming up 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. And so, tell us a little bit about your organization and what it's doing in the Triangle area, and also talk a little bit about what you're seeing from that viewpoint.
Well, Ben, appreciate the opportunity to connect on what's obviously a vital issue. You're right. I've been doing this just about 20 years, been longtime partners with several folks here. Mike Fox and I, of course, go way back, and appreciate the ongoing partnership, sir. Good to have you on this panel for sure. In terms of RTA, I mean, we're the voice of the business community on transportation in the Research Triangle market. We describe ourselves as a metropolitan private-public partnership that drives consensus and action. That sits on our homepage. We represent the private sector, so that's why private comes first in our phrasing, but we work very closely with the public sector. And we're very proud to see good projects move forward and try to make projects go faster. That's kind of the website is, let's get moving.org. It's not let's get fixing to get ready to do something. It is let's get moving.org. Let's get things moving along here in transportation. When I see what's happening in mobility, I think Sepi mentioned some of this, Mike mentioned some of this, I suspect our rest of my colleagues will as well. I mean, certainly issues about fuel taxes, how we pay for this are up there, and also just how we're getting around, what parts have changed, what part won't change as a result of the pandemic. And so some folks asked me, I was just giving a presentation earlier today, and they asked, Joe, do you think that some of these changes as a result of the pandemic, work from home, work from anywhere, will they continue? And I said, I sure hope so. Because quite frankly, when we think about our responsibility in terms of flexibility, quality of life, impact on the environment, there's a lot of benefits to what we've seen. I mean, I'm not saying the pandemic itself was great, but there were certainly lessons to be learned from that. And so that was very helpful. And so that also relieves the burden on the highway system. Mike said it best about, the traffic's up, or at least back to daily normals, but it's spread out more over the course of the day, which is actually great for the use of the infrastructure system that NCDOT has developed. So this is if you want to talk about ways to help improve people's lives, work from home, work from anywhere is a major way of doing that. But it also impacts how we pay for transportation. RTA has had a position for several years. We call it an access user fee, and it's actually based on the model of a phone. So if you think about how our phones are, whether you have AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile or what have you, if you use 200 minutes one month and 1,000 minutes the next month, your price doesn't change, because you're not paying. What's valuable to you isn't the particular minute. What's valuable is access to a reliable network. That's what you're paying for. And so as you think about what Sepi was just mentioning about, planning from her industry standpoint, well, DOT needs to be able to plan well too with their revenues and so on. And if they knew that everyone who owned a registered vehicle was paying the same price every month, regardless of their usage, it would be much easier for them to plan. And then, so if somebody switches to an electric vehicle, or there's a new, God forbid, another pandemic and traffic craters by 50% for a while, you'd still be good. And this isn't some really amazing idea we came up with. All I'm describing is what we do for electric vehicles today, which is that one price, raising it to the average price that all of us pay for our fuel tax over the course of the year, and then just dividing it by 12 or 52, depending on whether you want to pay it weekly or monthly or what have you. And so that's something that we think about. But broadly, we're just making sure the triangle market is successful because we need mobility to work. But we also want the rest of the state to be successful, because the triangle cannot and will not be the only source of economic development or income and tax revenue. So we need our partners in the Triad and Charlotte and across the entire 100 counties to be doing well.
Thank you. And that's great. That's kind of what the theme of Business North Carolina is in many ways, in terms of kind of sharing stories from across the state, that you can know what's happening, not just in your area, not be insulated, but also kind of learn a little bit what's going on, maybe learn something for yourself, and other places can learn that as well. So that's great. I really appreciate that. Karen, let's talk a little bit about workforce development and your perspective, because you've got a very unique one from a transportation perspective. You train folks, and workforce development is huge in terms of this generation of folks coming on board to work in the transportation industry. So one, you're kind of on the front lines talking to these folks as well that they're looking to either take their levels to another, take their skills to another level, or but also you're also dealing with a lot of these businesses that are coming in going, hey, here's what we need. From that standpoint, right. What do you see from an industry perspective about what's going on in North Carolina?
Okay, well, first of all, thanks for letting me join here today. I really appreciate the opportunity. And you're right, my perspective is different because I'm on the training the students, and I'm here at Guilford Technical Community College, and we know that education and training is the key to success. And so our student base is highly interested in what is going on in industries. And so it's really important to bring in that input from different industries, what's going on in the local area, as well as in a broader picture. But when you think about transportation in particular, there's a really wonderful program here in Guilford County that's an apprenticeship program that we participate in. And there's a variety of different aspects to that apprenticeship program. And from my end, I'm in supply chain. We do have students in that program, and they are apprenticing with local companies. And it's a structured program that they participate in, and they go to school part-time and they work part-time, and they have incentives to continue in that program. And that's a big help for a student to know that things that certain costs, for example, are covered. They don't have to worry about it as much, but also they get on the job training in different areas in supply chain. And we do have, of course, transportation classes that we teach, and we focus on a variety of methodologies to bring in that real world into our classroom. But, in addition to the GAP program, which is the apprenticeship program, we also have warehouse associate, program. We, have, an engineering program. We have a wide variety of different things that we offer to our students. And depending on what their interests are and what their goals are, they, can participate in, quite a bit of training, as well as that classroom portion for the education piece. The focus of the group I'm in is supply chain. And we know that transportation is important because it's the way things move. If we don't have the transportation piece, we're not going to keep companies, open. We're not going to keep store, shelves filled. We're not going to be able to deliver to consumers, what they're asking for. So the students are really interested in this piece. So we try and focus on, the technologies that are out there. We recently added into our transportation program, a TMS program to give that real world experience of, what are companies using? How are they managing the transportation piece? How do they, load a trailer, for example, from front to back, so that it is more efficient in delivery. So things like that are important. We also use a lot of simulations, trying to show how does the real world actually work? And it really is helpful for the students. We also focus heavily on technologies such as ERP systems. We have a variety of supply chain classes that talk about SAP, and the students get hands-on experience working in that, because no matter what system a company is using, if you know SAP, you can work in other ones, whether it's, JD Edwards, or whether it's, Oracle or any other ERP system, you have that experience, you understand how an ERP system works. So we're trying to expand and offer what the students need to know when they actually exit school and go into the real world. One of the newer things that we're tentatively at the very beginning of talking about is adding in drone technology into our transportation classes, especially for that last mile delivery. Students are highly interested in this type of technology and its applications, because they see it in their personal life, not just their work life. And they see the impact that transportation and other supply chain issues have on their personal life, and not just, their work life. And that makes it more real to them. And they're more aware of what the problems are that have come out of the last 2 years as we struggle to emerge out of the pandemic and get back to work and see where we're going to go from here. So the students are really highly motivated to learn from industry and learn from partners that we have that come into our classes, that do industry panels, that attend our career fairs. They're really interested in what is being offered out there, and what do they need to know in order to participate in that and be able to be successful.
That's great. Highly motivated, but also incredibly highly trained. Once again, every time we speak to our folks at the community college system, and this will come up later, is we're so fortunate to be in a state that values it and invests in the community college system like we do. It's really a sight to behold for sure. Hey, Kevin. So once again, Mike mentioned this. Congratulations. With Boom and the announcement and such. Not surprised. Every time I talk to you, something's getting built out there at the airport. You're doing a heck of a job out there. Tell us a little bit from your viewpoint, running an airport, also from an economic development standpoint. What's going on with transportation from your viewpoint?
Well, I would say, and first, as everyone else has said, Ben, thank you for organizing us, getting us together, as always. And, I think that it's just a really good time right now. I was quoted as saying, this is a really cool time to be in this seat recently. it's just a very interesting time for this state. We're finally, getting some well-deserved long-term wins. As a kid, I played a lot of hockey, and every hockey coach out there, it's a requirement that they teach you. They use this line. They say, skate to where the puck will be, not to where the puck is. You probably all heard that used as a business euphemism before. But I think that it's really, really true with this state in so many ways. And actually, before I even mention the transportation piece, I'll go back to the community college system. Without the participation of GTCC and some of our other community colleges for SciTech and some others, we probably don't get this boom project. They were absolutely crucial to convincing the company that they were going to be able to get the employees that they need. So, absolute crown jewel for us to have them on our campus, actually, GTCC, but also for SciTech over in Winston, and again, some of the other counties around us that are part of the Triad. But, from a transportation perspective, Mike and I have known each other now for 20 years, plus or minus, I guess, and have worked together on forwarding the airport, mainly from my perspective, but also the roadway system that is around our area. And of course, Mike's got a much bigger picture view of all things transportation. Mine is much more myopic and focused. But what I'll say is that I think another part of the reason that we won this and that the state is winning other big projects, not just boom, there's all sorts of big wins in every part of the state, really, is because DOT has skated to where the puck will be. Our roadway systems, and I know that there are some communities that would argue that, no, we've got congestion, you're wrong, Kevin, this is not the way it is. But I think that on the whole, and I've lived in a number of communities in our country, that the roadway system in the state is second to none, in my opinion. And I actually believe that right here on the Triad is absolutely the best that you could possibly have. There's so much capacity for future growth. And that all goes back to, as Mike said, really, we're standing on the shoulders of our predecessors here, people who 30, 40, 50 years ago made plans and took gambles and said, let's figure out where the puck's going to be and start heading in that direction. Sometimes at the risk of being challenged or criticized for those decisions. And now, they're being proven right. And as Mike said, that I wish they all could still be here, frankly, to take a bow. But, I think the forward-looking actions of DOT, and for that matter, other parts of the state that are involved in the economic development world, have really led us to the point where we're very competitive. And this boom announcement is not the end for us. There's an awful lot of activity. It's just the beginning, or the middle of the game, let's call it, because we've had Honda and FedEx and Cessna for decades now. But there's still a long way to go. And I think not just again at the airport, but in the state as a whole.